Let's hope symbiotes aren't on this list. I'm your host Yusuf, and these are 10 scary things astronauts experienced in space. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. Anyways, let's get it started. Number 10, almost eaten alive by wolves. Alexei Leonov barely avoided being eaten alive by hungry wolves in 1965. He performed the first spacewalk on his mission, but experienced both air leaks and material unexpected stiffening, the latter of which made cramming himself back in a capsule a very near thing. He actually had to lower suit pressure and risk the bends scrambling back inside. Finally, Voskhod 2 went off course during re-entry and landed in the Ural Mountains, where Leonov and his commander were forced to wait for rescue amid the howls of hungry wolves. Number 9, decompression. Decompression is nasty business. If you've ever watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, Firefly, Outland, or either of the 2 James Bond films that take place in space, then you have at least a fiction-obscured understanding of this. All 3 crew members of Soyuz 11 were thrown violently to the other side when depressurized during re-entry. But in 1965, a technician at Johnson Space Center in Houston lived to tell about the experience. While inside a vacuum chamber, the tech accidentally depressurized his spacesuit. His last memory before losing consciousness? The sensation of the moisture on his tongue beginning to boil, according to Scientific American. The experts don't all agree on the full symptoms of rapid decompression, but among the possibilities are swollen flesh, vaporizing blood, exploding eyeballs, and ruptured lungs. Number 8, using the bathroom. I know it sounds silly, but stay with me. On May 5th, 1961, Alan Shepard wet his pants aboard Freedom 7. But Apollo bathroom facilities would get a lot worse before they got any better. I don't think I'm the only guy to find something fundamentally frightening about a urinal that consists only of a cylindrical hole equipped with glizzy straddling technology, a valve, and the empty void of outer space. That's right, folks, it's you, the fitting, the valve, then space. One misplay, one bad move, one terrible mechanical malfunction, and it's so long, soldier. Goodbye, private. It was an honor working with you. And if that wasn't bad enough, space writer Andrew Chaikin's description of going number 2 in orbit is even worse. In A Man on the Moon: The Voyages of the Apollo Astronauts, he writes about a special plastic bag that resembles a top hat with an adhesive coating on the brim. I think you can guess how that works. Then the whole spectacle gets even worse when you have to knead germicide into the contents. According to Chaikin, one Apollo 7 astronaut shared this bit of advice on the whole ghastly endeavor: get naked, allow an hour, have plenty of tissues handy. Number 7, frozen bodies. Many countries, notably the USSR and the United States, transported a variety of animals to space as test subjects before sending manned shuttles up there. To mention a few, there's Laika the dog, Miss Baker the squirrel monkey, and Ham the chimp. Some of them returned safely to Earth, while for others, a minor calculation error resulted in space becoming their pet cemetery. Astronauts on suborbital missions can still see the bodies of these human advancement martyrs. While this is unfortunate, stumbling upon the floating bodies of these helpless animals can be a strangely disturbing experience for astronauts. Number 6, isolation. Isolation in space can have profound effects on the psychological well-being of astronauts. The unique environment of space, characterized by confinement, distance from loved ones, and limited social interactions, can lead to various psychological and cognitive challenges. Astronauts live and work in relatively small spacecraft for extended periods, often with limited privacy and personal space. The lack of variety in surroundings and sensory inputs can lead to feelings of monotony, boredom, and sensory deprivation. This can have a significant impact on mood and cognitive functioning. Astronauts typically spend months or even years with a small crew in close quarters. While they receive training to promote teamwork and cooperation, conflicts and tensions can arise due to the inherent stressors of the mission. Social isolation, coupled with any interpersonal difficulties, can contribute to feelings of loneliness, frustration, and psychological strain. Number 5, radiation. Radiation exposure is a significant concern for astronauts during space travel. Beyond the protection of Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field, astronauts are exposed to higher levels of radiation from cosmic rays, solar particle events like solar flares, and galactic cosmic rays. Cosmic rays originate from outside the solar system and consist of high-energy particles, such as protons and heavy ions, traveling at close to the speed of light. Solar particle events occur during solar flares or coronal mass ejections when the sun releases bursts of energetic particles, predominantly protons. Exposure to ionizing radiation in space can pose risks to the health of astronauts. It increases the likelihood of developing radiation sickness, which includes symptoms like nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and increased susceptibility to infection. Long-term exposure to radiation can also lead to an increased risk of cancer, cataracts, cardiovascular disease, and degenerative diseases of the central nervous system. Number 4, the launching and re-entry process. The launch begins with the ignition of rocket engines, generating an enormous amount of thrust to lift the spacecraft off the ground. This phase is accompanied by intense vibrations and loud noise. The rocket ascends through the Earth's atmosphere, which generates high levels of aerodynamic forces. The spacecraft must withstand these forces while traveling at incredible speeds. The risk of aerodynamic instability, structural failure, or engine malfunction exists. Multi-stage rockets shed lower stages as they consume their fuel, reducing weight and improving efficiency. Once in space, the upper stage of the rocket propels the spacecraft into its intended orbit. Precision and timing are crucial. Over time, the spacecraft's orbit gradually decays due to atmospheric drag. During re-entry, the spacecraft encounters intense atmospheric friction, leading to extreme heating and rapid deceleration. Maintaining stability and control during re-entry is crucial to ensure a safe descent. Number 3, mysterious knocking. Before we begin, let us remind you that there is no sound in space, only a vacuum. Sound waves, unlike light, cannot flow in a vacuum, hence you can't hear anything in space. This is why astronaut suits contain specific communication equipment that allows them to communicate with one another and mission control on Earth. Yang Liwei was the first astronaut launched into space by China's space program in 2003. He was sitting in a space shuttle when he heard a knock on the door many times. It sounded like someone striking an iron pail with a wooden mallet, according to Liwei. Because sound cannot travel in space, Liwei couldn't tell if the knocking came from inside or outside the ship. Anxious, Liwei took a peek through the porthole, but saw nothing that could explain the unusual banging. When Liwei returned to Earth, he attempted to describe the knocking to experts, but he was unable to reproduce the same sound he heard in space. The story grows more frightening as numerous other Chinese astronauts claim to have heard similar sounds during their space missions in 2005 and 2008. Number 2, spacewalks. Spacewalks present various hazards and challenges. Astronauts must adapt to the microgravity environment, where they are weightless and must carefully maneuver to perform tasks. Handling tools and objects in microgravity requires precise control and coordination. Spacewalkers are exposed to the risk of micrometeoroid impacts, which can cause damage to the spacesuit or spacecraft. While spacesuits provide some protection, larger debris poses a significant threat. The spacesuit helmet may have limited visibility due to glare, scratches, or fogging, making it challenging for astronauts to see clearly. Number 1, a shiny object. Alan Bean, a NASA astronaut, was the 4th person to walk on the moon's surface. He had the opportunity to do so when piloting Apollo 12 in 1969. Bean claimed to have seen something bright out in the distance during his moonwalk. He characterized the thing as resembling a leather shoe. It's difficult to imagine what Bean observed, and regrettably, there's not much of an explanation. With Bean's passing, it appears that the eerie glow on the moon will remain a mystery for the foreseeable future. Thanks for watching. Those were 10 scary things astronauts experienced in space. Leave a like and comment if you think we missed anything, and we hope you have a scary day.